All right, so let's go ahead and let's talk about blood supply to the hand. So first thing we're going to do is, as you've seen, I've drawn in a radius, I've drawn in an ulna. The other thing is you probably have noticed that all of the writing is upside down. Reason I do that is I want you to be able to look at your own hand and maybe even draw this in on your own hand with like some washable marker or something like that as a study tool. So first thing we're going to see a couple common arteries here that we're already familiar with. We're going to see a radial artery, and we're going to see an ulnar artery. We're also going to see this posterior interosseous artery. And as we know, the anterior interosseous artery and the posterior interosseous artery come together right around pronator quadratus. We're going to see there's going to be a little couple communicating branches here. They're going to provide a little bit of an anastomosis for that posterior interosseous artery. After we see that, what we're going to see is we're going to see that the radial artery and the ulnar artery are going to give off a couple branches. Okay. Now these branches are really nice because they are named not only for where they are, they're not only named for what they do, but they're also named for where they go. Keep in mind that when we're looking at the blood supply to the hand, I basically have a network of two different arches. Okay, that's really and truly all it is a network of two different arches. I'm going to have a deep palmar arch, and I'm going to have a superficial palmar arch. So what I'm going to do here is basically I'm going to have a deep palmar branch of the radial artery. And then I'm also going to have a superficial palmar branch. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw this superficial arch in green. It does not mean that there's alien blood going through it. It does not mean we've turned into the predator, nothing like that. In green, we're going to have the superficial palmar branch of the radial artery. Same thing on the other side. I'm going to have a deep palmar branch of the ulnar artery and a superficial palmar branch of the ulnar artery. Okay, so we'll abbreviate those. Okay, so this is going to be my superficial palmar branch of the ulnar artery. I'm going to have a deep palmar branch of the ulnar artery. Nice and easy. Now, this is what makes blood supply of the hand not so scary. The superficial palmar branch of the radial artery and the superficial palmar branch of the ulnar artery are going to come up and they're going to form, you guessed it, the superficial palmar arch. Superficial palmar arch, nice and easy. Now, what I'm going to see with the superficial palmar arch is that the superficial palmar arch is going to give off common branches, what we're going to call the common palmar digital arteries. And that's going to give me blood supply to digits 2, 3, 4, and 5. Here's how it works. We're going to have one here. We're going to have one here. And we're going to have one here. And we also have one here. So what happens is that these common palmar digital arteries are going to split. And we probably already guessed that since I saw that name common, that they're going to split into two. Okay, so down here, those are going to be my common Palmar digital arteries. And up here are going to be my proper Palmar digital arteries. Okay, that's my superficial palmar arch. My radius, my ulna, the arteries, radial artery, ulnar artery, come together. They anastomose with the posterior interosseous artery. Past that, or distal to that, they give off two branches, superficial palmar branch and a deep palmar branch. The superficial palmar branches come together and they form the superficial palmar arch. You probably already guessed what happens with the deep branches. The deep palmar branches are going to come together and they're going to form the deep arch. So this is my deep palmar arch. What we're going to see with the deep palmar arch is that it's going to give off a couple different branches. It's going to give off these tiny little branches. I'm going to kind of shoot this one up. This one's going to be called the Palmar metacarpal branches. The other thing I'm going to see is that, because we still have to get blood to the other side of my index finger, and I need to get blood to my thumb. So we're also going to see these branches here. This one's going to be called Radialis Indices. The reason it's called that is because the radial artery is going to provide more blood instead of the ulnar artery, and it makes a lot of sense. It's on the radial side. We're also going to see that I'm going to have a couple branches because I still have to get to my thumb. And we're going to have a common pollicis artery, and then proper digital artery. There's a lot of times that you're going to see this common pollicis artery, also called princeps pollicis. So that's going to be the blood supply to the palmar surface of my hand. Again, looks like a lot. It's really not. All I have are two different arches: superficial palmar arch, deep palmar arch. The deep palmar arch is going to provide blood to one side of my index finger and my thumb. Superficial palmar arch is going to supply blood to one side of my index finger and digits 3, 4, and 5. Based on their position, the superficial palmar arch is going to get more blood from the ulnar artery. The deep palmar arch is going to get more blood from the radial artery. Okay, so that was the palmar surface. What we're going to see is that the palmar surface of the hand has a much more intricate network of arteries than the dorsal side of the hand. Dorsal side, to be perfectly honest with you, pretty darn easy. Okay, so what we're going to have again, I got my radial artery, I got my ulnar artery. No big deal. What we're going to see on the dorsal side is that, and just kind of pretend this hand is on the dorsal side, and we'll ask for forgiveness, is that I'm going to have a couple arteries coming off. These are going to be dorsal pollicis. Also, what I'm going to have, very similar to the palmar side, is I'm going to have dorsal carpal branches that are going to be closer to the wrist, and they're just going to kind of form this weird little network of arteries. If you guys are able to dig those out in cadaver lab, that'd be amazing to do. From there, pretty easy. What I'm going to see is I'm going to see basically the same type of network that I saw for the palmar side of the digits. Except that this time everything's going to be named dorsal. Probably already figured that out, didn't you? What I'm going to also have is I'm going to have these tiny little branches coming off. These are going to be dorsal metacarpal branches. This guy up here is going to be Dorsalis Indices. And then these up here are going to all be the dorsal digital arteries. Whoa, that didn't work. And that's basically the dorsal side of the hand in terms of blood supply. A lot easier than the palmar side.